Senator Peters.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to our witnesses for being here today to discuss what is truly a very critical issue, and it's very personal to me as well. On May 12th of 2015, some close friends of mine, Gilda and John Jacobs, lost their daughter, Rachel, on an Amtrak 188 derailment in Philadelphia. And she sent a letter to the committee for committee members, and Mr. Chairman, I would like to enter this letter into the record with unanimous consent.
Objection.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I think it's important. It's a letter that will be entered into the record, but I'd like to read the first two paragraphs, if I may, for the committee members. Dear committee members, and this is written by Gilda Jacobs, as we do often this weekend, my husband John and I visited the grave of our daughter, Rachel. And each time I go, I cry for her now 5-year-old son, Jacob, her husband, Todd, and my daughter, Jessica. We all lost part of ourselves and our family, and the world mourns her loss as well. Rachel's life and the lives of 7 others were needlessly cut short when the Amtrak train they were riding on derailed May 12, 2015, and it could have been prevented had PTC been installed and activated on the tracks and train. It has been almost 3 years, and yet more trains have derailed, other passengers have died, and scores of others have been injured. And yet PTC has not been installed or activated on all passenger trains in our country. My anger is seething. I think we can all relate to that and share that anger as well. Mr. Anderson, I know you're new into the position at Amtrak, and I know you care deeply about each and every passenger that rides on your train as well, and you've expressed that here today as well as in a previous hearing. But I think your viewpoint on this is particularly insightful now, coming from the airline industry, and I know as a leader in the airline industry, you focused on safety, and the airline industry now has an enviable record when it comes to safety. You have always given very candid assessments of the situation. I'm going to ask you to give a very candid assessment today. As you come into this industry and you look at how PTC has not been moving forward, the industry continually comes forward, says we need more time, we need more time. What do you think is going on, and why has the railroad industry not been able to do this when we have seen successes in aviation?
I think, speaking for passenger railroad and being new to Amtrak, is what I said in my remarks, which is we tend to think of ourselves as a freight railroad that carries passengers rather than a world-class passenger railroad modeled after the great passenger railroads around the world. And when you take that approach, and you take the approach that we had in aviation with the SMS systems that have been at the core of driving the improvements in aviation, and how the SMS systems in aviation got started was in the mid-90s. There were a series of accidents from about 93 to 97. And as a result of that, we made huge investments in technology and in SMS systems. And I think what we have to do in the industry is stop thinking of ourselves as an extension of the freight railroad industry. They do a really good job, and their safety record's improving, but we carry passengers, and that's a much higher standard of care. And I don't think the industry has focused on having that same commitment to safety management systems and compliance.
So they haven't had the commitment. Do you believe they've had the time to do that?
I believe we have had the time. I mean, we went through these sorts of exercises in aviation with controlled flight into terrain, wind shear warning systems, collision avoidance systems in midair, which were the 3 big drivers of issues in aviation. All 3 of them got solved with technology that we installed in the cockpits of all airplanes.
So the industry has had the time. They've had an extension. They may be asking for more time. As we heard from Ms. Fleming, half of the railroads aren't going to be compliant. And yet there seems not to be a focus. And it doesn't seem to be a resource issue. Mr. DeWeese, you mentioned that many of them have not, in fact, like only a few funding recipients have used their PTC funds. So they're not spending the money. They have the time. Then is this a question of commitment? And if there's a lack of commitment, that is a serious, serious problem when we have people dying on our railroads. So the industry is going to need to answer to that. Thank you.